It's car con carne. Let's eat in the car. It's car con carne. And now here's the star of our show, James Van Alstyne.
And welcome to Car Con Carne. Here I am. I'm James Van Alstyne. Car Con Carne is sponsored by our friends at Siren Records McHenry, 3902 Main Street in McHenry. I love going there. I've said this before. It's pretty much the only place I've been to other than the grocery store and various restaurants for carryout during the entire pandemic. And the thing about Siren, it's so cool. It actually converted my teenage son. You know, teenagers, they're sullen. They're unwilling to play along with what their parents like. Siren Records converted my son into a vinyl collector. Like, that's the one thing we do every weekend. We go record shopping, and I guarantee you this weekend we're going to Siren Records McHenry. That's like our social hub at this point. Check it out for yourself. Siren Records McHenry, 3902 Main Street. Coming up on this show Friday night, it's a double feature. Lou Malnati's, the honorable, the legendary, the iconic Lou Malnati's turns 50 this year. Next week, in fact, they're celebrating their 50th anniversary. Owner of Lou Malnati's, Mark Malnati, will be joining me to talk about the legacy of Lou's. Also, old friend Joel Frieders of Hope for the Day, which is a really wonderful organization, will be coming back on to talk about the new Hope for the Day IPA initiative. So we're going to be talking about mental health and beer. Good stuff. Now, next week, I can scarcely believe this is happening. Barbara Magnolfi, she was in the movie Suspiria, the first one, the OG, 1977, a horror classic, an Italian cinema legend. Barbara will be on the show next week. I can't even believe I'm saying those words out loud. But tonight, I am joined. I love how this works. I'm joined by Jason Baygood. He is the bassist and vocalist for the long-lost band Urban Idols. Nice to see you. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
This is going to sound like I'm reading. It's because I am. Urban Idols.
No worries.
Urban Idols is a late 90s Chicago punk band that played everywhere from Fireside Bowl to Double Door back in the day. The final Urban Idols album was recorded at Sonic Iguana Studios in 2000. Here we are 20 years later. Revisited is on Punkhead Records. It's a blast of really well done turn of the century Chicago punk rock. Is this just closure at this point, putting this record out for the band?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you know, what it's been is, you know, there's definitely a resurgence, especially in the pop punk bubble these days. And there's so many more new underground punk labels putting things out, new bands as well as reissues from older bands. And really just through, you know, the power of the internet, just reconnected with some of the guys from Punkhead Records. I think, you know, those guys, mainly the guys from the Capgun Heroes. They were previously in a band, the Cancer Merchants, that used to, you know, we actually were on a compilation with them back in the day. And they started this label, Punkhead Records. And, you know, we just kind of started talking. And I said to them, you know, they remembered the band. And I said, hey, you know, we actually had our final studio session back in the fall of 2000, as you mentioned, that just never really saw the light of day. We sat on it really after we recorded it. That was actually the last thing we did as a band. So not many people have heard any of those songs. So, you know, the timing was right to, you know, they were interested in putting it out digitally. And, you know, here we are today.
I think the thing that's most striking about these songs, they sound vital. It's hard to believe they've been buried for 2 decades. They
right.
sound contemporary. They sound badass. They're hooky and edgy all at the same time. This is great stuff you've been sitting on.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
And so the album, the final release, I'm assuming it's a final release, is Revisited. So was this, are you still talking to the other guys in the band? Is everyone, because you probably all had to have a meeting about putting this out, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know, a handful of guys I talk to regularly, that, you know, kind of still, you know, around in the scene. So, you know, still see at shows, you know, our guitarist, Mike Byrne, you know, went on to the Methadone. So, you know, he's still been in the scene this whole time. So, you know, talk to him off and on, you know, both in person and online. The other guys actually moved to California for work and other reasons. So, you know, through social media, I've kept in contact with them. But, you know, having this opportunity to do this release, you know, got us all back talking collectively for the first time in a long time. So that's been fantastic.
So we'll get into some of the songs and we'll get into the release a little bit more. Before we go there, let's jump backwards. You guys started off in 1997?
Yeah, that's correct.
You mentioned Mike Byrne. You two met on AOL?
Yeah. Oh, well, I've known him and his brother going back to late 80s, early 90s. We funny story, actually first met, you mentioned Siren Records before. I'm a vinyl junkie. Mike is a vinyl junkie too. We actually met at a local record convention that they used to have monthly in Hillside.
I love the Hillside Record Convention.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they still have them now. Yeah. So back in the day, that's actually where we first met. And, we just would see each other at shows off and on, throughout the 90s. And, we went to different high schools. I went off to college, and then, exactly. Back in, I think it was, 97 when I came back from college on AOL there was a chat room. I think it was like local Chicago punk or something. And ironically, there was a thread about, it was about Naked Ray Gun, and it was brought up that this one Naked Ray Gun show that we realized we were both at, and just as we were talking back and forth, we kind of realized, hey, I know you, and then both of us were not in bands at the time, and we both just really kind of had we kind of laid the foundation that we really wanted to do in homage to just the classic Chicago punk sound, with a little bit of rock and roll thrown in that kind of came afterwards. So.
Was Ray Gun really the big one? Was that the one who you were immediately drawn to as you were a kid discovering punk rock?
Earlier than that, ironically, Ray Gun for me, even though being a local band, was a little bit later. I mean, like a lot of, I'm 46, so my gateway into music was definitely kind of like heavy metal than thrash metal. And then what kind of got me into punk was definitely kind of when the crossover scene of the late 80s was kind of coming on, bands like DRI, et cetera. So my early gateway was probably more like hardcore. So a lot of the New York hardcore stuff, and 7 Seconds was probably my first true underground band that really drew me in to DIY punk rock. And then, here locally, radio stations like WNUR with their Fast and Loud show, that was huge. I'll never forget. Very first time I heard Ray Gun was the song Only in America. And like, whoa, what is this? A punk band having saxophones, and, that was insane, but it was edgy and it was fantastic. So, that was kind of my first exposure, but they weren't my first punk band per se, even though they were local. But then, of course, as I got into them, they kept releasing new material, of course, started seeing them at, the Riviera all the time. But they were definitely probably the foundation for what we wanted to do with Urban Idols, definitely with a mix of some post-punk and, even some English stuff like Stiff Little Fingers was a big influence, who obviously were a huge influence on Ray Gun too. So that's kind of granular.
So set the scene, because for a lot of people who didn't get to experience the Chicago scene of the 90s, and especially the punk rock scene of the 90s, it has this almost Camelot type of vibe to people who weren't there. It's this magical time.
Right.
Was it for you when you were deep in it, when you were late 90s playing Fireside Bowl? Was
absolutely.
It?
Yeah, absolutely. And even before, what's kind of missing today is, you had those dedicated venues like, so when I was in high school, there was like McGregor's was like, the all ages spot. And you knew that every Wednesday and Sunday was going to be punk rock. So, that's where I saw, bands like, Screeching Weasel, Sludgeworth, Pegboy, and then all the nationals that kind of came through, everyone from Green Day to whoever, played there. And so that's what kind of really built a scene. And that's what really kind of drew me in, because, it wasn't just discovering the music and loving the music, it was also being part of a scene. And then seeing bands like that and realizing, hey, I can do that. Maybe not as well as the bands that I love, but it was kind of accessible. It was something that could be in reach. And then that even got accelerated when Fireside Bowl, later on came, because, they had gigs almost every night of the week, 2 gigs a night. So, getting gigs there, it was pretty much just getting slotted on the schedule. So, by default, just, it could be ironic, you could be playing a local gig, 1 month, and 3 months later, you get on a gig with, a great national that's a fit. It was just really a great time. There was just a lot more opportunity. And, I also feel too that bands worked a lot harder, just really putting the grind in, helping promote and being part of that whole process. It truly was a scene. And
everyone knew each other, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Bump into them at, record stores, coffee shops, everywhere.
So was Urban Idols like peak band experience for you? I mean, even though it's been 20 years, was this like the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. For me personally, yeah. I mean, I've been in bands before and bands since, but as far as for what I'm really into, and the bands I got to play with, the studios that we got to record at, for me personally, yeah, that was definitely the pinnacle of my musical career for sure.
So it ended kind of abruptly, and this leads me to Revisited. What happened? Mike and Trey went to the Methadones?
Absolutely.
That was the end?
Yeah, that pretty much was it. I mean, that was a major factor. I mean, I formed the band with Mike. I mean, we, of course, when the other guys came in, we wrote the music together. But we had the original idea for what we wanted to accomplish with this band, musically. And of course, when they had the opportunity to join the Methadones, of course, they wanted to jump on that. And I get it. That was going to open up the door for advanced recording opportunities and touring opportunities, things that me at my time and where I was at in my life, I certainly was not able to do. So when they got that opportunity, it was just kind of, kind of without those guys in the band, it was just kind of, and for where I was at in my life too, it was just a good time to kind of call it quits.
So these songs, these Sonic Iguana songs have resurfaced on Punkhead Records. It is Revisited. At the time you kind of put them on the shelf, did you do it with some bit of regret? Like, oh shit, I can't believe we're not going to do anything with this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it killed me. I mean, that's why I'm so ecstatic that these finally saw the light of day. I mean, it's definitely the best recording that I've ever been on. Some of the favorite songs that I've ever been part of writing, and just sonically, I just think they sound fantastic. And
they really do. I mean, this is, if someone asks, well, what does Chicago punk sound like? Well, this is it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We certainly didn't originate the sounds, but yeah, we definitely were influenced by it. So
there's a video for Conspiracy, big hook on that song.
Yeah.
That's the song I could have imagined going further back in the day. Or
going
somewhere back in the day. Not further. It didn't go anywhere. Going somewhere back in the day.
Yeah. I mean, ironically, that was actually the second time we had recorded the song. But the first time we recorded, I mean, this was definitely, an improvement in, how we played the song and everything. I mean, it was a song that we knew when we, booked a session at Sonic Iguana. Yeah, this is definitely a song that we need to re-record.
And Dead Ringers is the first song. That's just awesome, in your face kind of stuff.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely kind of our garage punk and roll, whatever you want to call it. Definitely some Motorhead in there too.
So a couple other songs, Late Night Residual, Brighter Day, Vertigo. This is just a solid set of music. Again, it's shocking that it just has been sitting on a shelf. And no one really was the wiser that it was sitting there. I mean, and nostalgia being what it is, and the drive to reconnect with the things that make us happy, this is an important thing to put out there. I love hearing this. I'm glad you guys and Punkhead unearthed this and put it out into the universe. Now, the next challenge is getting this on vinyl, because you're a vinyl junkie.
Yes, I am. And yes, I've had that conversation. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
So with the other guys, since you are in touch with them to some extent, more or less, was there a conversation like, well, this is out in the universe, maybe we should do something to back this up when the world gets back to normal?
Yeah. I mean, the talks have been there, could we possibly all go into our own studio and maybe, knock out some originals or maybe even some covers? And, I mean, there's been some opportunities out there. I mean, obviously, when something like this goes out, of course, you start getting contacted. Hey, how active are you guys? Obviously, could we ever all get together? I mean, if we could all get together and record something or work on tunes, that would be fantastic. I mean, I think folks would be open to it. It's just, unfortunately, geographically where we are, but with technology now, who knows what could be. So
as far as members go, Dan's an interesting guy, just vocally.
Yeah, he is.
He's got his own sound. And
absolutely.
I would encourage people to listen to this, if nothing else, just to hear his voice, because I think it's so damn cool.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because he's always kind of been he's very charismatic. And if, I know there's not a lot of video of us out there live. I don't think anything that's online, but he definitely is possessed by David Lee Roth as much as Iggy Pop, and he sounds like Jello. So it's he's kind of like me. He's influenced by not just punk, but so many other things. I think that's what made our band unique. Because I mean, even though we are a punk band, but I mean, we've been called everything from garage to rock and roll to punk and roll. And I'm fine with all of it, to be quite frank with you.
Well, you're a Midwestern guy. I mean,
exactly.
That's the diet we all were raised on.
Exactly. Husker Du, Ray Gun. I mean, it's not all just one. You can't just pigeonhole it to one genre, and nor would I want to.
Hell no. Speaking of Husker Du, I bought Warehouse at Siren Records.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, that's time I need to get out there. I want to see their Lillington shrine.
It is definitely a shrine. But my God, that Warehouse album, Standing in the Rain.
Yeah.
Like a top 10 song. But back to you, revisited the stuff recorded at Sonic Iguana. We can listen to it on Bandcamp. We can buy it on Bandcamp. We can actually support you guys and buy the digital recordings. Because after a while, I'm sure you've experienced this. If you listen to the same stuff over and over on Bandcamp, you get that message. Yeah, now's probably a good time for you to start paying for this.
Yeah. Open the wallet.
That's what it says.
Yep.
Like cut the shit. Will you pony up some cash for the stuff you're enjoying?
Yeah.
I love this. I'm so glad you put this out. I can't say it enough. It is Revisited by Urban Idols. Check it out. Jason, thank you so much for doing this tonight.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate your support.